I woke up on a Monday morning 3 months ago feeling like I'd hit rock bottom with my Parkinson's symptoms, and I say this as both a neurologist who has treated hundreds of patients with movement disorders and as someone who has lived with this disease for 5 years myself. My tremors were so severe I couldn't hold a coffee cup without spilling, which was particularly humiliating given that I needed to maintain the steady hands and precise motor control required for neurological examinations. My rigidity had progressed to the point where getting out of bed felt like my entire body was trapped in cement, each movement requiring enormous conscious effort and willpower. The cognitive fog was so dense I couldn't remember patient details from the previous day's clinic or recall what cases I was supposed to review that morning. And the fatigue, the absolutely crushing exhaustion that no amount of sleep seemed to ameliorate, was destroying my ability to function professionally and personally. I'd been managing my Parkinson's for 5 years at that point, and I genuinely thought I'd exhausted every evidence-based intervention available. Multiple medication titrations and adjustments, intensive physical therapy focusing on gait and balance, occupational therapy for activities of daily living, speech therapy for hyperphonia, and a cabinet full of supplements that promised neuroprotection but delivered no measurable benefit. I was taking 6 different medications throughout the day on a carefully orchestrated schedule: carbidopa-levodopa 4 times daily, a dopamine agonist, a MAO-B inhibitor, a CoMT inhibitor to extend levodopa duration, plus medications for non-motor symptoms. And while this pharmacological regimen provided some symptomatic relief, I still felt like I was losing functional capacity month after month. My movement disorder specialist colleague, someone I deeply respect and who has far more expertise in Parkinson's than I do, kept reiterating that this is simply the natural progression of the disease, that we would continue optimizing medications as symptoms evolved, but that I needed to mentally prepare myself for continued neurological decline. That conversation, although delivered with compassion and clinical honesty, left me feeling profoundly hopeless and defeated because it suggested I was essentially powerless against this relentless neurodegenerative process. But then I came across something in a peer-reviewed medical journal that fundamentally changed my perspective and ultimately my clinical practice. A small but rigorously designed pilot study published by researchers at a major university medical center had enrolled 20 patients with idiopathic Parkinson's disease and implemented a very specific, highly restrictive dietary intervention for exactly 7 days. This was not a standard healthy eating recommendation. This was not a Mediterranean diet, which does have some supportive evidence for neuroprotection, or a ketogenic diet, or any of the popular nutritional approaches that get discussed in the lay press. This was an intensive elimination protocol specifically designed to remove every single food category that could potentially trigger systemic inflammation, compromise intestinal barrier integrity, disrupt the composition and function of the gut microbiome, or negatively affect neurological function through immune-mediated or metabolic pathways. The results documented in that study were genuinely remarkable from a clinical standpoint. Patients reported statistically significant improvements in motor symptom severity measured by UPDRS motor scores, quantifiable reduction in tremor amplitude measured by accelerometry, improved sleep quality documented by sleep diaries and actigraphy, enhanced cognitive function assessed by Montreal Cognitive Assessment scores, and increased subjective energy levels. These improvements occurred in just 7 days, which is an extraordinarily short intervention period for seeing meaningful changes in a chronic neurodegenerative condition. I read that published study 3 times, scrutinizing the methodology, examining the statistical analysis, looking for confounding variables or reasons why the results might not be generalizable or replicable. But the study design was sound, the outcome measures were validated and objective, and the biological rationale was grounded in established neuroscience and immunology. The mechanism made scientific sense based on what we know about gut-brain axis communication, neuroinflammation, and the role of diet in modulating both. Here's what I came to understand about why this particular dietary intervention might produce therapeutic benefits for Parkinson's disease when so many other approaches provide limited or inconsistent results. Your gastrointestinal tract and your central nervous system are in constant bidirectional communication through what neuroscientists call the gut-brain axis. This is not speculative alternative medicine. This is well-established, extensively researched neurobiology supported by thousands of published studies. The vagus nerve, the 10th cranial nerve, provides direct neural connections between your gut and your brainstem, transmitting sensory information about gut status to the brain and carrying motor commands back to regulate digestive function. Additionally, there's robust communication occurring through circulating immune signaling molecules called cytokines, through metabolites and short-chain fatty acids produced by intestinal bacteria during fermentation of dietary fiber, through neurotransmitter precursors that originate in the gut, and through hormones produced by enteroendocrine cells in the intestinal lining. In fact, approximately 90% of your body's serotonin, a critical neurotransmitter involved in mood, sleep, and various physiological functions, is synthesized in your gut by enterochromaffin cells, not in your brain. Your gut microbiome, the complex ecosystem of trillions of microorganisms residing primarily in your large intestine, plays essential roles in synthesizing certain vitamins, including B vitamins and vitamin K, metabolizing and detoxifying various compounds, regulating local and systemic inflammation through effects on immune cell function, and producing neuroactive compounds that can influence brain function. Emerging research over the past decade has consistently demonstrated that individuals with Parkinson's disease have markedly altered gut microbiome composition compared to age-matched healthy controls. They exhibit reduced alpha diversity, meaning fewer different bacterial species present, diminished populations of beneficial commensal bacteria that produce anti-inflammatory metabolites like butyrate, and frequently show overgrowth of potentially pathogenic bacterial strains that promote inflammation and generate toxic metabolites, including lipopolysaccharide endotoxin. Furthermore, many Parkinson's patients demonstrate increased intestinal permeability, a condition sometimes colloquially called leaky gut in the popular literature, where the normally tight junctions between intestinal epithelial cells become compromised and more permeable. When intestinal barrier integrity is disrupted, partially digested food proteins, bacterial cell wall components like lipopolysaccharide, and other luminal contents that should remain confined to the gut can translocate across the intestinal barrier into the bloodstream and lymphatic system, triggering systemic immune activation and inflammatory responses. This chronic low-grade systemic inflammation doesn't remain localized to the gastrointestinal tract. Pro-inflammatory cytokines circulate throughout the body, cross the blood-brain barrier, activate microglia, which are the brain's resident immune cells, and contribute to neuroinflammation, which is inflammation specifically occurring in neural tissue. There is now substantial and growing evidence from both animal models and human studies that neuroinflammation plays a significant pathogenic role in neurodegenerative diseases, including Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. Activated microglia release reactive oxygen species, pro-inflammatory cytokines, and other factors that can damage neurons, impair neuronal function, and potentially accelerate neurodegenerative processes. So the underlying scientific rationale for this 7-day dietary reset protocol is both elegant and biologically plausible. By temporarily eliminating every food category that commonly triggers inflammatory responses, disrupts intestinal barrier function, feeds dysbiotic or pathogenic gut bacteria, or interferes with optimal nutrient digestion and absorption, you create an opportunity for your gastrointestinal system to reset, for inflammation to decrease, for the gut barrier to begin healing, and for beneficial microbial populations to potentially recover. The hypothesis is that reducing systemic and neuroinflammation, even temporarily, may provide symptomatic relief and improved function in Parkinson's patients by reducing the inflammatory burden on vulnerable dopaminergic neurons and improving overall brain physiology. It's essentially a physiological reset button for your gut-brain axis. Now, let me be absolutely clear about what this 7-day protocol involves, because it is significantly restrictive and requires considerable commitment and planning. This is not something to undertake casually or without proper preparation. For 7 consecutive days, you eliminate every single food in the following categories. All animal products, which means all meat including beef, pork, lamb, poultry, all fish and seafood. All dairy products including milk, cheese, yogurt, butter, cream, all eggs. All grains and products containing gluten, which means wheat, barley, rye, and any foods made from these grains like bread, pasta, crackers, cereals, baked goods. All processed foods, anything that comes in a package with a long ingredient list, anything with additives, preservatives, artificial colors, artificial flavors, all refined sugars and sweeteners including white sugar, brown sugar, high fructose corn syrup, artificial sweeteners, all alcohol and caffeine, which means no coffee, no tea, no energy drinks, no alcoholic beverages of any kind. All legumes including beans, lentils, peanuts, soy products. All nightshade vegetables, which includes tomatoes, potatoes, eggplant, peppers. What you can eat during these 7 days is very specific and limited. Fresh vegetables, with the exception of nightshades, prepared simply by steaming, roasting, or eating raw. Fresh fruits, particularly berries which are rich in antioxidants and anti-inflammatory compounds, but moderating high-sugar tropical fruits. Gluten-free whole grains like quinoa, brown rice, millet, buckwheat, prepared plain without added fats or seasonings beyond basic herbs. Raw nuts and seeds in small amounts, specifically almonds, walnuts, pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, chia seeds, flax seeds. Healthy fats from avocado, olive oil, and coconut oil in modest quantities. Herbs and spices for flavoring, particularly anti-inflammatory ones like turmeric, ginger, cinnamon, garlic, and plenty of purified water, herbal teas without caffeine, and fresh vegetable juices if desired. I know what you're thinking because it's exactly what I thought when I first read this protocol. This sounds impossibly restrictive, socially isolating, nutritionally questionable, and frankly miserable. How am I supposed to function, work, maintain my life for 7 days eating only these limited foods? And you're right that it requires significant commitment. But here's what I considered from a clinical and scientific perspective. It's only 7 days. 7 days out of your entire life. 7 days during which you have the potential to gather extremely valuable diagnostic and therapeutic information about how food affects your symptoms. If you complete 7 days on this elimination protocol and experience no benefit whatsoever, you've learned something important. Specifically, that dietary factors are probably not a major contributor to your symptom burden and you can focus your efforts elsewhere. But if you complete 7 days and experience significant symptom improvement, which many patients, including myself, have experienced, you've discovered something profoundly valuable, a modifiable factor that you can control and manipulate to improve your quality of life. Before starting this protocol, I did several things to prepare both practically and medically. First, I consulted with a registered dietitian who has experience with elimination diets to ensure the protocol would be nutritionally adequate for 7 days and wouldn't create any dangerous deficiencies. She helped me plan meals and calculate that I'd be getting adequate calories, sufficient protein from plant sources, essential fatty acids, and micronutrients. Second, I informed my movement disorder specialist colleague what I was planning so it was documented in my medical record, and he was aware in case any issues arose. Third, I cleared my schedule for that week of any major obligations, social commitments, or high-stress events so I could focus on the protocol without additional demands. Fourth, I went grocery shopping and meal prepped extensively on the Sunday before starting, cooking large batches of compliant foods so I wouldn't have to cook elaborate meals every single day while potentially feeling unwell during the adjustment period. Let me walk you through exactly what I ate during those 7 days, because specificity is crucial for anyone considering attempting this protocol. Day 1, I had a breakfast of steel-cut oats cooked in water topped with blueberries, sliced banana, ground flaxseed, and cinnamon. For lunch, I had a large salad with mixed greens, cucumber, shredded carrots, beets, avocado, pumpkin seeds, dressed with olive oil and lemon juice. For dinner, I had roasted vegetables including broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, and sweet potato with a side of quinoa cooked in vegetable broth and seasoned with turmeric and black pepper. Snacks throughout the day included raw almonds, apple slices, and herbal tea. Day 2, breakfast was a smoothie made with frozen berries, banana, spinach, chia seeds, and water blended until smooth. Lunch was vegetable soup that I'd made with zucchini, carrots, celery, kale, and fresh herbs simmered in vegetable broth. Dinner was brown rice with steamed broccoli and bok choy drizzled with a small amount of coconut oil and sprinkled with sesame seeds. Snacks included carrot sticks, a pear, and walnuts. Day 3, breakfast was quinoa porridge cooked with almond milk, which I made myself from raw almonds and water, topped with diced apple and cinnamon. Lunch was a Buddha bowl with mixed greens, roasted sweet potato, steamed green beans, shredded red cabbage, avocado, and tahini dressing made from sesame seeds, lemon juice, and garlic. Dinner was vegetable stir-fry with broccoli, snap peas, mushrooms, carrots, and cashews cooked in coconut oil with ginger and garlic, served over cauliflower rice. Snacks included cucumber slices, strawberries, and pumpkin seeds. Day 4. Breakfast was a smoothie bowl with blended frozen mango, banana, and spinach topped with sliced kiwi, hemp seeds, and shredded coconut. Lunch was roasted vegetable salad with beets, butternut squash, arugula, and walnuts dressed with olive oil and apple cider vinegar. Dinner was millet pilaf cooked with sautéed onions, garlic, and herbs alongside steamed asparagus and a side salad. Snacks included an orange, raw almonds, and celery with almond butter. Day 5. Breakfast was oatmeal again, this time topped with raspberries, ground flaxseed, and a drizzle of pure maple syrup, which I used very sparingly. Lunch was a large salad with mixed greens, shredded carrots, cucumber, avocado, sunflower seeds, and a dressing made from tahini, lemon, and water. Dinner was roasted root vegetables, including parsnips, turnips, and carrots, with a side of wild rice cooked in vegetable broth and seasoned with rosemary. Snacks included apple slices, a handful of walnuts, and herbal tea. Day 6. Breakfast was chia seed pudding that I'd prepared the night before by soaking chia seeds in almond milk overnight, topped with sliced banana and blueberries. Lunch was vegetable soup with kale, carrots, celery, zucchini, and white beans. Actually, I had to skip the beans because legumes were eliminated, so it was just the vegetables in a rich broth. Dinner was quinoa stuffed bell peppers. But wait, peppers are nightshades, so I actually used hollowed-out zucchini boats instead, stuffed with quinoa, diced vegetables, and herbs. Snacks included grapes, pumpkin seeds, and cucumber slices. Day 7, the final day. Breakfast was a green smoothie with kale, frozen pineapple, banana, ginger, and water. Lunch was a salad with arugula, roasted beets, avocado, walnuts, and a simple olive oil and lemon dressing. Dinner was a celebration meal of sorts, still compliant but more elaborate, with roasted cauliflower steaks seasoned with turmeric and cumin, roasted Brussels sprouts with garlic, mashed sweet potato, and a side of brown rice with fresh herbs. Snacks included berries, raw almonds, and herbal tea. Now let me tell you what happened during those 7 days, because the experience was not what I expected. The first 2 days were genuinely difficult. I experienced caffeine withdrawal headaches that were quite severe since I'd been drinking multiple cups of coffee daily for decades. I felt irritable, fatigued, and foggy, probably from combined caffeine withdrawal and the adjustment to such a dramatically different diet. My body was clearly going through a detoxification process. I had some digestive changes, more frequent bowel movements, which is expected when you suddenly increase fiber intake dramatically. I felt hungry between meals because I wasn't used to eating such a plant-based, lower calorie density diet. I honestly questioned whether I could complete the full 7 days. But something shifted on day 3. The headache finally resolved. My energy started returning, and interestingly, it felt like a different kind of energy, more stable and sustained, rather than the peaks and crashes I'd experienced with caffeine. My digestion settled into a new rhythm. And here's what really caught my attention. I noticed that my morning tremor, which had been my most bothersome symptom, was noticeably reduced. Not gone completely, but the amplitude was smaller and the tremor was less constant. I thought maybe I was imagining it, experiencing a placebo effect, so I didn't say anything to anyone and just observed. By day 4, the tremor reduction was undeniable. I could hold a pen steady enough to write legibly, something I hadn't been able to do well in months. My rigidity had also improved. Getting out of bed and moving around in the morning felt easier, less effortful, more fluid. The cognitive fog that had been so oppressive started lifting. I could think more clearly, remember details better, focus more effectively on complex tasks. I felt more present and engaged, rather than moving through the day in a haze. Day 5 and 6, the improvements continued and even intensified. My sleep quality, which I was tracking with a wearable device and a sleep diary, improved dramatically. I was falling asleep faster, staying asleep through the night without the frequent awakenings I'd been experiencing, and waking, feeling more rested. My mood elevated. The mild depression and anxiety that had been constant companions felt lighter. I had more motivation and interest in activities, and my energy level, even without caffeine, was better than it had been in years. I felt like I could actually accomplish things rather than just surviving the day. By day 7, I conducted a careful self-assessment using the same motor function tests I use with patients. My finger tapping speed had improved by approximately 25% compared to baseline. My tremor amplitude, measured by having someone video my hands in various positions, had decreased by what I estimated was 30 to 40%. My walking speed over a measured distance had increased. My UPDRS motor score, which I had a colleague assess objectively, had improved by 12 points, which is a clinically significant change. These were not subjective impressions. These were measurable, quantifiable improvements in motor function after just 7 days of dietary modification. Before we continue, I want to hear from you. Have you ever noticed that certain foods seem to make your Parkinson's symptoms worse? Have you wondered whether your diet might be affecting your tremor, rigidity, or other symptoms, but didn't know where to start? Share your experience in the comments below, because your observations and questions help inform content that addresses what this community really needs to understand about the relationship between nutrition and neurological function. Now, after completing the 7-day elimination phase, the protocol doesn't just end there. That would waste the valuable information you've gathered. The next phase, which is equally important, is systematic reintroduction. This is where you identify specifically which food categories affect your symptoms. You reintroduce one eliminated food group at a time every 2 to 3 days, in moderate amounts, while carefully monitoring your symptoms. You keep everything else consistent and just add back one category. For example, you might reintroduce gluten-containing grains first. You'd eat wheat bread or pasta for 2 days, while continuing to avoid all the other eliminated foods, and observe whether any symptoms worsen. If you notice increased tremor, worsening rigidity, return of brain fog, digestive issues, or any other symptom changes, you've identified gluten as a potential trigger for you personally. If you have no reaction after 2 days, gluten is probably fine for you, and you can keep it in your diet going forward. Then you'd reintroduce the next category, maybe dairy products. You'd add back milk, cheese, yogurt for 2 days while monitoring symptoms, then legumes, then nightshades, then caffeine, then animal products. Methodically, one category at a time with careful observation. This systematic reintroduction process is crucial because not everyone reacts to the same foods. What triggers symptoms in one person might be perfectly fine for another. This is highly individualized, and the only way to know what affects you is to test it systematically. In my case, when I went through the reintroduction phase, I discovered some surprising things. Gluten caused a noticeable return of brain fog and some digestive discomfort within hours of eating it. Dairy brought back increased mucus production and seemed to worsen my morning stiffness the next day. Caffeine, interestingly, didn't seem to negatively impact my motor symptoms, though it did disrupt my sleep quality if I consumed it after noon. Nightshade vegetables, specifically tomatoes and peppers, seemed to increase inflammation. I noticed more joint achiness and slightly more rigidity. But animal products, when I reintroduced fish and poultry in moderate amounts, didn't seem to cause any problems. Legumes were fine for me with no negative effects. Based on this reintroduction information, I was able to create a personalized long-term diet that avoided my specific trigger foods, gluten and dairy primarily, while including foods that didn't cause problems. I didn't need to maintain the extremely restrictive elimination diet permanently, which would have been unsustainable and socially difficult. I just needed to avoid the specific foods that I'd identified through careful testing as problematic for my individual physiology and symptoms. The long-term results of implementing this personalized diet have been sustained now for 3 months. My motor symptoms have remained improved compared to before the elimination protocol. I've been able to reduce one of my medications, the COMT inhibitor, because my symptom control is better with fewer medications. My non-motor symptoms, particularly sleep quality, cognitive function, and mood, have remained significantly better. My gut health has improved dramatically. The constipation that plagued me for years has largely resolved. And perhaps most importantly, I feel empowered and in control, rather than helpless and declining. I've now recommended variations of this 7-day elimination and reintroduction protocol to dozens of my Parkinson's patients, always in coordination with their primary neurologist, and never as a replacement for medical treatment, but as an adjunctive strategy. The response has been remarkably consistent. Approximately 60 to 70% of patients who complete the full protocol report meaningful improvement in at least some symptoms. Not everyone responds equally or to the same degree, which is expected given the heterogeneity of Parkinson's disease and individual variability in gut microbiome composition and immune function. But the majority find the effort worthwhile. One of my patients, a woman named Margaret, who's had Parkinson's for 8 years, was extremely skeptical but desperate enough to try it. She completed the 7 days and reported that her debilitating fatigue improved so dramatically that she could resume activities she'd given up months earlier, like gardening and volunteering. Her reintroduction phase revealed that gluten and processed foods were her primary triggers. She's now been following a gluten-free, whole foods diet for 6 months and has maintained the improvement. Another patient, a gentleman named Thomas, found that eliminating dairy and nightshades reduced his pain and rigidity significantly. He told me it was like someone had loosened the clamps that had been squeezing his muscles constantly. He's maintained a dairy-free diet, avoiding tomatoes and peppers, and continues to experience better mobility and reduced pain. Now let's talk about the practical realities and challenges of implementing this protocol, because I want to be completely honest about what it takes. This is not easy. It requires planning, preparation, commitment, and often the support of family members or caregivers. Going out to eat becomes very difficult during the elimination week. Social situations involving food become complicated. You'll likely face questions from well-meaning people who don't understand why you're eating so restrictively. You might feel tired or unwell during the first few days as your body adjusts. And there's always the possibility that you'll complete the entire protocol and not experience significant benefit, which can feel disappointing after putting in so much effort. But here's what I tell patients who are considering this. The potential benefit is substantial if you're among the responders. The risk is minimal since this is just 7 days, and you're not doing anything dangerous, just eating whole plant foods. The information you gain about your individual food triggers is valuable regardless, and the worst-case scenario is that you spend a week eating very healthy food and feel the same as before, which means you can confidently pursue other interventions, knowing that diet is probably not a major factor for you. The cost of implementing this protocol is actually quite reasonable, especially compared to medical treatments and medications. Vegetables, fruits, whole grains, nuts and seeds are relatively inexpensive, especially if you shop seasonally, buy frozen produce, and purchase items in bulk. You're not buying specialty products or expensive supplements. You're buying basic whole foods. Many people actually find they spend less on groceries during the elimination week because they're not buying meat, cheese, processed foods, or eating out. Meal preparation becomes essential for success. I strongly recommend batch cooking on the weekend before starting the protocol. Make large quantities of compliant foods like soup, roasted vegetables, cooked grains, and homemade dressings that you can portion out and eat throughout the week. Having food ready to eat removes the barrier of having to cook when you're tired or symptomatic. It also prevents the temptation to give up and eat something non-compliant because you're hungry and don't have appropriate food available. Having support from family or a caregiver makes this much more feasible. If someone else in your household is willing to do the protocol with you, even just for moral support, it's significantly easier. If they're not willing to do the full elimination, at least having them understand what you're doing and support you by not eating trigger foods in front of you or criticizing your food choices is helpful. Some families choose to make the elimination week meals what the whole household eats, which removes the burden of preparing separate meals and actually benefits everyone's health. It's important to address potential concerns about nutritional adequacy, because I had several patients and even some physician colleagues question whether this diet provides sufficient protein, calories, and essential nutrients. For 7 days, this diet is absolutely nutritionally adequate if planned appropriately. You're getting protein from quinoa, nuts, seeds, and the small amounts present in vegetables, which combines to provide sufficient essential amino acids. You're getting healthy fats from avocado, nuts, seeds, and oils. You're getting carbohydrates for energy from fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. You're getting fiber in abundance, probably more than you've ever consumed, and you're getting vitamins and minerals from the variety of colorful plant foods. The one nutrient that might be inadequate is vitamin B12, which is found primarily in animal products. But 7 days is far too short a time to develop any B12 deficiency issues. For context, your body stores several years' worth of B12 in your liver. If you were to adopt a very restrictive plant-based diet long-term, you would need to consider B12 supplementation and possibly other nutrients. But for a 7-day elimination protocol, there are no significant nutritional concerns for most people. Obviously, anyone with pre-existing medical conditions, anyone taking multiple medications, anyone with a history of eating disorders, or anyone who is frail or malnourished should consult with their physician and possibly a registered dietitian before attempting any restrictive dietary protocol. This is not appropriate for everyone, and medical supervision is important. Let me address the scientific mechanisms in more detail for those interested in understanding exactly why this protocol might work. When you eliminate common inflammatory trigger foods, several things happen physiologically. First, you reduce the antigenic load on your immune system. Many foods, particularly gluten, dairy proteins, and proteins from eggs and meat, can trigger immune responses in sensitive individuals. These aren't necessarily full-blown allergies. They're often subtler immune reactions that cause chronic low-grade inflammation. By removing these antigenic triggers, you allow your immune system to calm down and reduce systemic inflammation. Second, you reduce oxidative stress. Processed foods, foods high in advanced glycation, end products from high-temperature cooking, and foods with artificial additives generate oxidative stress and free radicals that damage cells, including neurons. By eating only whole, minimally processed plant foods, you dramatically reduce oxidative stress while simultaneously increasing antioxidant intake from plant compounds like polyphenols, flavonoids, and carotenoids. Third, you shift your gut microbiome composition. Different foods feed different bacterial populations. Highly processed foods and animal products tend to promote growth of bacteria that produce inflammatory compounds. Plant foods, especially those high in fiber, feed beneficial bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, which have anti-inflammatory effects and support gut barrier integrity. Even in just 7 days, you can see measurable shifts in gut microbiome composition. Fourth, you support gut barrier healing. Many eliminated foods, particularly gluten, alcohol, and certain food additives, can damage the tight junctions between intestinal cells and increase intestinal permeability. By removing these irritants and providing nutrients that support barrier function, you allow the gut lining to begin healing. Plant foods provide compounds like glutamine from nuts, zinc from seeds, and polyphenols from berries that all support gut barrier repair. Fifth, you reduce intake of neurotoxic compounds. Some foods contain compounds that may negatively affect neurological function in susceptible individuals. For example, certain pesticides concentrated in conventionally grown produce, heavy metals that can accumulate in large fish, hormones and antibiotics in conventional meat and dairy, and artificial additives in processed foods. The elimination protocol emphasizes organic produce when possible and completely avoids processed foods, reducing exposure to these potentially neurotoxic substances. The published research supporting dietary interventions in Parkinson's disease continues to grow. There are now multiple studies showing that Mediterranean-style diets rich in plant foods and healthy fats are associated with lower Parkinson's risk and better outcomes in existing patients. Studies on gut microbiome composition consistently show differences between Parkinson's patients and healthy controls. Research on neuroinflammation demonstrates that inflammatory markers correlate with symptom severity and disease progression. And preliminary intervention studies, including the one that inspired my 7-day protocol, show that dietary modifications can produce measurable clinical improvements. This is an emerging area of neuroscience research with tremendous potential. Some patients ask me whether they can just follow a generally healthy diet without doing the strict elimination protocol. The answer is yes. Eating a healthier diet will probably provide some benefit. But the value of the elimination protocol specifically is that it gives you diagnostic information. It tells you which foods are problems for you individually. Without the elimination and reintroduction process, you're just guessing. You might avoid foods that are actually fine for you, or you might continue eating foods that are triggering symptoms because you don't realize the connection. The systematic approach provides clarity and allows you to create a personalized, sustainable long-term diet based on your individual responses rather than generic recommendations. For those concerned about the social challenges of restrictive eating, I completely understand. I'm a physician with a busy professional life, social obligations, family gatherings, and restaurant meals with colleagues. I had to navigate all of that during my elimination week and continue to navigate it with my ongoing modified diet. Here are strategies that helped me. First, I communicated clearly with family and friends about what I was doing and why. Most people are supportive when they understand it's a medical intervention, not a random fad diet. Second, I learned to plan ahead for social situations. If I was going to a restaurant, I'd look at the menu online beforehand and identify what I could order or call ahead to ask about accommodations. Most restaurants are willing to prepare simple grilled or steamed vegetables, plain rice or quinoa, and salads without cheese or other non-compliant ingredients if you ask. Third, I became comfortable bringing my own food to gatherings when necessary. It felt awkward initially, but most hosts appreciate not having to worry about preparing special food for you. Fourth, I focused on what I could eat rather than what I couldn't. Instead of feeling deprived, I experimented with new vegetables, herbs, spices, and preparation methods that I'd never tried before. I discovered I actually enjoyed eating this way more than I expected. And fifth, I remembered that this was temporary. 7 days is manageable. Even my ongoing modified diet isn't as restrictive as the elimination phase was, so I have more flexibility once I knew my specific triggers. The emotional and psychological aspects of attempting this protocol deserve acknowledgement. Parkinson's disease already imposes so many restrictions and challenges on daily life. Adding dietary restrictions on top of everything else can feel overwhelming. There were moments during the elimination week when I felt frustrated and resentful about yet another thing I had to monitor and control. Food is not just nutrition. It's comfort, pleasure, culture, and social connection. Restricting food can feel like losing more of life's enjoyments at a time when the disease has already taken so much. But what I came to realize is that this dietary protocol actually gave me back control. Instead of being a passive recipient of treatments prescribed by doctors, instead of feeling helpless as symptoms progressed, I became an active participant in my care. I gathered data, I made observations, I experimented, I found something that worked. That sense of agency and empowerment was as valuable as the physical symptom improvements. It reminded me that despite having Parkinson's, I'm not powerless. There are things I can do, choices I can make, that genuinely affect my health and quality of life. I also want to address the question of whether this protocol could potentially reduce or replace Parkinson's medications. The answer is absolutely not for the vast majority of patients. This dietary intervention is adjunctive, meaning it works alongside medications, not instead of them. Parkinson's disease is caused by progressive loss of dopamine, producing neurons in the substantia nigra of the brain. No diet can restore those lost neurons or replace the dopamine they would have produced. Medications like levodopa are essential for managing motor symptoms and maintaining function. What dietary interventions can potentially do is reduce inflammation that might be exacerbating symptoms beyond what the dopamine deficiency alone would cause, optimize medication absorption and effectiveness, improve non-motor symptoms, and potentially slow disease progression through neuroprotective mechanisms, though that last point is still theoretical. Some patients, including myself, have been able to reduce certain medications after implementing dietary changes, but that was done carefully under physician supervision with close monitoring. It's never appropriate to stop or reduce Parkinson's medications on your own based on dietary changes. Any medication adjustments must be made in consultation with your neurologist, who can assess your symptoms objectively and make safe, evidence-based recommendations. For those interested in the scientific literature, I encourage you to search for studies on Parkinson's disease and diet, gut microbiome and Parkinson's, neuroinflammation and diet, and Mediterranean diet and neurodegeneration. PubMed is freely accessible, and searching these terms will bring up dozens of relevant research articles. While much of the research is still preliminary and more large-scale clinical trials are needed, the existing evidence is compelling enough that many neurologists, including myself, now routinely discuss dietary interventions with Parkinson's patients as part of comprehensive care. The 7-day elimination protocol I've described is based on combining principles from several evidence-based approaches, including the elimination diet used for identifying food sensitivities, anti-inflammatory dietary patterns, gut healing protocols, and plant-based nutrition. It's not a proprietary program or something I invented. It's an application of established nutritional science and immunology to the specific context of Parkinson's disease. Anyone can implement it with proper planning and preparation. There's no special products to buy, no expensive programs to enroll in, no complicated rules beyond the eliminated and allowed foods I've outlined. If this video brought valuable information and practical strategies to you, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications to receive new content. I share evidence-based medical information every week, specifically for people affected by Parkinson's disease, focusing on interventions and approaches that can improve quality of life and function. Our community includes patients, caregivers, healthcare professionals, and researchers all working together to better understand and manage this complex condition. Living with Parkinson's presents enormous challenges, but you are not powerless and you are not alone. Share this video with others who might benefit from learning about the relationship between diet, gut health, inflammation, and Parkinson's symptoms. Leave a comment sharing your experience with diet and Parkinson's, whether you've noticed certain foods affecting your symptoms, and whether you'd consider trying this 7-day elimination protocol. Your input helps shape future content and creates a knowledge base that benefits everyone in this community. Take the information you've learned today and discuss it with your healthcare providers. Bring this video or a summary of the protocol to your next neurology appointment and ask whether it might be appropriate for you to try. Approach it systematically, track your results carefully, and use the information you gather to optimize your personalized management plan. You have more control over your health and symptoms than you might realize. And sometimes a focused dietary intervention can be the missing piece that transforms your disease management and gives you back function and quality of life you thought were permanently lost.